Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of AI in the Enterprise. I want to touch upon something that I think is really important. We're in a time like no other. And of course, artificial intelligence and digital transformation is the big imperative that's on the table right now. But when you get past all of the technology and all the AI and all the neural nets and the modeling, the most important thing in that equation is still the human in the loop. It's the human being that's involved in driving change, innovating, and helping us persevere through the current situations. And I want to actually take that and go a little deeper in this. And I've asked someone to join me whom I have a lot of respect for, and that's Gianni Giacomelli. Gianni, welcome.
Hey, Sanjay, how are you?
Good, thank you. Gianni, I don't think you are a stranger to my audience, but just in a minute, I picked on you for a variety of reasons. So I obviously enjoy working very closely with you, and you've led a number of initiatives around innovation for the company. You've also worked very closely with the MIT group on collective intelligence, the Center for Collective Intelligence, and I think your work there has been remarkably refreshing and good to see. But what I enjoy the most about you, and perhaps the area that I think I relate to you the most, is you're the committed father of two teenagers, daughters in your case, and you've brought them up and your family across 3 different continents. And what an amazing experience that is. Gianni, how did that all happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're still in talking terms with me, so it's kind of worked out. We went from Germany to India to the US to Germany again. Look, I think as long as they are healthy and balanced, it's fabulous to see them being exposed to the world and, becoming hopefully more open and more mature human beings. I love it.
So awesome to hear. Parenting, and particularly in the current pandemic, is such an important topic for all of us that are parents, and it's great to hear your thoughts on that. And by the way, welcome and congratulations on your most recent move. I think you're in Berlin today, so thank you for joining us from Berlin. Listen, Gianni, I wanted to take on something that I think is really important, and that's really thinking through the impact in the current pandemic and what's going on at the human level. And I think there are 2 or 3 things that are really critical for us to talk through, and I wanted to have you speak to some of those. I think this whole area of how do you drive creativity and innovation in a very distributed environment is a big question mark and a challenge, and I think there's steps that can be taken proactively to address that. I think this notion of fatigue that is starting to set in, and this is ending up being a much longer haul than we had originally hoped for. And whether you're working from home or whether you're living at work, managing through that fatigue becomes really important. And then I think about skilling and cross-skilling and learning and development, and what an amazing time in the evolution of our own careers to be reflecting on that. And I think there's some lessons I want to take away from you. So I want to take those 3 topics and dive in. Let's pick the first one and talk to us a little bit about how do you preserve creativity at the scientific level. What are the kind of the building blocks to making sure that we have innovation, albeit in distributed teams?
Yeah, look, it's super important. I mean, the reality is that these days innovation really happens in networks of people, large networks, being in a company or beyond the company. And that network is like a neural network. I mean, it's composed by people and is by now increasingly connected by machines, right? I mean, you and I are now connected by machines, GPT-3 will connect people's thoughts in very different ways in the future. And so I think the key there, and I've researched quite a lot on that. There's a lot written on this website called supermind.design if anybody is interested. But weak links are the most important things in innovation. A weak link means that you and I have a strong link. You and I work together. We work together all the time. We connect. We have groups in common. But and so that makes us functional. But what makes us innovative is the links that you have with people that you talk to once in a while, people you connect to and bring up some surprising angles because they don't live in your world exactly, but they know how to talk to you. Same with me. And I benefit from you bringing me ideas from your weak links, and you benefit from the same on my side. In a pandemic like now, like what happens now, typically people get shocked and the structure of a network changes. In a period like this, people tend to retrench a little bit. Maybe not you and I, because we have networks and we know, and this is what we do, but most people actually kind of retrench a little. And that has an immediate impact on the freshness of your ideas and the novelty. And especially when you do digital transformation, you really want to have quick links. Yeah.
I think it's an amazing point. And I think what you've given me in that quick statement is that all of us ought to be thinking about our networks as strong links and weak links. And I think it's intuitive, and we're always involved in our stronger links, people we talk to more regularly. But the best ideas and creative thinking and out-of-the-box components actually come from weak links. And we have to make a proactive and a strategic attempt to make sure that those links are there. So thank you for that. Let's maybe pick the second area. I mean, listen, Gianni, this fatigue thing is real. People are spending more time at work. They're doing it in a very different environment than they used to. And there's research that shows that things like this, video communication, just actually is more taxing on the brain than being able to meet with people in person. How do you approach that?
I think as a leader, it's quite important, first of all, to realize that this is not just the weak people, right? Everybody is going through that. We know, I mean, I think you're talking about research from Microsoft that shows that, the brain engages in a different way with, communication of, the Zoom type, right? And so there was also statistics from LinkedIn research that show that compared to March, the mentions and comments around burnout have doubled. Right, so it is true. It is real. It's not just people talking to each other just for the sake of, taking advantage of it. It's actually hard for people to live in these conditions. I think the other big problem is, and I think research shows that the span of the day has increased. Between the first login and the last log out is in average about 90 minutes more of time spent somewhere close to your systems. Well, the reality is that many people actually end up having attention wandering and a lot of multitasking, which actually we know contributes to the fatigue. People feel that they're spinning their wheels, right? And that is something that can be very dangerous. And I think us as leaders, we need to take deliberate steps to give our people the tools to regain control, discipline, and structure around their day, around what we do, when we do it, where we do it, right? And it's actually an unprecedented situation. Most people would typically take structure from their office space. You go to the canteen, I meet Sanjay, I have a coffee, or I go back to the office and I work there. Now all that's gone, right? And I think it's really important that we regain control of that.
I love that. What I found most remarkable of what you said was that don't approach it as a problem. It's not something having to do with people that are weak in the ecosystem. This is real, this is here, this is now, embrace it, understand it, and proactively manage that. And I thought that's learning all of us can take away. So thank you for sharing that. Hey, Gianni,
let's just to complete that thought. We are in a natural experiment where we all put to use technology that we've been having for the last 3-4 years. Right? The communication that we use now, which is, by the way, enabled by AI, all these technologies that we didn't have. And thankfully, we have them now, because had it been 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it would be really hard for you and I to talk to. I think the advantage that we have and the big opportunity is that we come out of this and we know, if we're good, we know how to handle the human side of the natural experiment. Then the technical side has actually figured out itself, right? I mean, the cloud computing has shown its elasticity, etc. If we figure out how to get people emotionally balanced, the future of global collaboration and these kind of things will be super bright, but we need to figure out the human side.
What an amazing point, by the way. I mean, I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but you're exactly right. I mean, what an amazing point in the evolution of technologies, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and the last 6 months have shown that you can put them into play in a very predictable and a very managed and effective fashion. And I think the biggest question on cloud that was always there is, will it really scale? Is it real? Has now actually been answered forever. And so it is true that we have the components that we probably didn't have 5 years ago, as you said, to be able to put this into a solution and address that. And so I think that's really, really good. And for my audience, for the people watching it that are all digital transformation leaders across the globe, what an amazing insight. Gianni, let's shift to the third area. And it's an important one because skilling is such an important thing. I found myself, by the way, and just as a personal anecdote, I've started learning to cook, and I'm in a group called Chef Steps, and I'm really enjoying actually participating and learning and trying. And it's an amazing time to actually broaden your thinking and skill sets, whether it's outside of work or whether it's within work. How do you do that in a managed fashion at scale with lots of people around you?
I think it's actually a very timely thing. Many people actually feel worried, burning out also because they don't know what the future holds. And reskilling is actually the key to resiliency, right? Whatever happens, if you have more portable skills or if you're able to develop skills fast, the world will never go past you. You'll always be able to catch the next wave. but most people never been brought up to do that, right? We went to university, school, MBA, whatever we did, but then that was then, right? And I think it's super important now as leaders that we help our teams spend a little bit of that time that we said is a little more, flexible these days, spending a bit of time learning. And I think that learning has two effects. One is it's a little bit of a change of pace compared to the day-to-day work. It's actually good for the brain. It uses different parts of the brain, but also it provides people with a certain amount of emotional comfort because it makes them feel I'm going to be stronger, right? It's not the hamster wheel anymore. You're preparing for the next jump, and I think reskilling can be quite emotionally stabilizing for many people. Now, this is easier said than done. In our organization, for example, and right, we've seen that compared to the second half of last year, we have a 3x learning hours in the system because we had the ability to scale, as in the content was there, the paths were there, all the recommendation engines were there, and just people went in, right? But many organizations are not there. And I think the problem is not solved at an individual level. I think content is there and, it needs to be curated, and managers actually need to show that spending a bit of time on learning is actually a valuable thing for employees and team leaders to actually do. But that's the key to the future. And I think it's also the key to emotional resilience.
Gianni, that's very interesting. I hadn't thought about it till you just mentioned it, but I've always thought about learning and development and reskilling and cross-skilling as a career-oriented, I need to stay current thing. But I think what you brought out for me is that there's a whole psychological, emotional connection component to feeling more fulfilled and more satisfied and more lean and hungry and fulfilled in terms of the sense of confidence that comes to it. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I think it's right. And by the way, it also explains and it gives us a good path to how to structure learning and development in a way that it actually plays into that emotional well-being of a person, in addition, obviously, and separately to the sort of business benefits of reskilling. And that's very insightful. I hadn't thought about that.
And, Sanjay, we went to school in times in which that emotional thing wasn't the thing that people wanted you to feel. They wanted you to feel your learning is good for your career. That's it. But I mean, learning should be a joy. It should actually make people feel that, life is bright, the future is bright. And I think we can do that. We can design the experience, the employee experience around that.
One of the biggest things that is happening around us, and I think it's a massive opportunity, and I say this because both of us are parents. In my case, I have 2 boys, you have 2 daughters. There's a real opportunity for us to fix the problem with education that has existed for a long time. Education really was designed and currently is still designed for a scenario where information isn't necessarily immediately available. And so you learn very differently. You learn the way you used to learn 100 years ago. It doesn't take into account that all this information is now immediately available, and our kids are exposed to that, and they find sort of the dichotomy of learning in the old way and dealing in the new way very different. And it's been a big problem, but I hope that as we go into a little bit more from an online and a different way of learning, that we take the opportunity as a community to restructure that piece. I think that probably fodder for another discussion, but your thoughts actually prompted me and got me thinking on that. Gianni, anything else you'd want to add for our audience? It's always so much fun listening to you, but if you have to give 1 or 2 inputs, anything else that comes to mind?
Look, I think I try to keep myself healthy and sane by thinking that this thing will make us stronger, right? We will come out of this situation having understood how to solve the technical barriers, but also hopefully the human-centered design of a brighter future of work, right? And maybe if this is what it takes, let's take it with some level of joy, and hopefully it will end up soon. But it is an unprecedented opportunity to solve the technology problem, as well as how does you're talking about the human in the loop. How do we put that human happily in the loop?
What a amazing note to end this conversation on. Here's the 3 things I took away in a sentence each. I took away the fact that, as you think about your networks, think about the weak links strategically and proactively, and make sure you're focused on that through these times. I took away the fact that fatigue is real, and embrace it and endorse it and work on it. Don't assume it's a weakness problem and just a certain subset of people. And I really walked away with a much better understanding of learning and development in the context of psychological sort of wholesomeness of a person, as opposed to just the career tracking. And I think those are great insights. I love your ending. This is a moment that's very interesting in time. Let's embrace it. Let's enjoy it. Let's make sure we don't lose that which is so critical to who we are. We are human beings. Gianni, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for being, and thank you for joining in from Berlin for this. We look forward to speaking with you. And by the way, I want us to add the links. You mentioned a website. You talked about some research. We'll add that to the links to this LinkedIn Live so that we can continue this dialogue offline. Thanks again, Gianni.
Thanks for having me.